You will see his face later on. Working as a senior resource person in the same organization I am working there. More than 10 years. His basic degree is in science, but his doctorate in education. He has worked as principal in the capacity of principal in so many prestigious institutions before coming to our organization. He has been a language teacher, language trainer, and one of the rare specialties of experts. Nowadays we are facing the problem, a statistician. So he is a statistician also. And we have been fortunate enough to work under him and learn from him for the last more than 10 years. So this is what his brief introduction was. Now, he and his slides will speak more about himself and his vast knowledge. And one thing I would like to say that he is always ready to not only teach, because this is his job here. He is always ready to learn from even us, even from juniors. If something is to be learned, he will be happily learn that. So this is what his personality is. So with great regard and humble request, sir, kindly take over the session. Dr. B. Illangovan, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon to you all. நீங்கள் எல்லாருக்கும் நமஸ்தே.
Okay, sir.
Namaste, sir.
Now,
Namaste, sir.
now my discussion is on teaching, learning, testing and evaluation. At the outset, it seems to be a very larger canvas, which I may fail to paint to your satisfaction. But anyway, within the given time, I'll try my level best to cover all the terms and the concepts which fall under all these 4 terms we have. So teaching. So teaching, learning, and testing and evaluation. See, teaching is the profession in which we are all engaged. And what do we mean by teaching? So we are all in the education fold, in the within that education. So the thing that connects you with me is education. So what is that education? Let's decide first. Let's understand the term. Many of you might have studied in your B.Ed courses or M.Ed courses that what is education, definition, and other things. Just in brief, we'll see that, recollect whatever we have learned earlier, and we'll proceed further. See, education, the purpose of education is to bring about desirable changes in the behavior of the learner by establishing stimulus-response bonds. This is what the very minimum definition I can say. So in the education process, we try to bring about the desirable changes in the behavior, and the changes that are desirable, which we want, the intended changes. We want to change his first angliness first, or maybe his poor quality in writing, spelling, so that we want to improve. So some changes we want in the learner, and that we are trying to change towards, we are moving towards that, we are working towards that, bringing the changes, desirable changes in the behavior of the learner. And how do we achieve? Is a traditional method or any method? Actually, the stimulus response bond is there. So that's what the behaviorism says. So when we say it is behaviorism, education is behavior changes, then we have to accept this stimulus response bond, establishing stimulus response bond. For this particular stimulus, or when there is some kind of see you some sense organs, you sense something and you have to respond to the whatever the sense reaches your mind. So some kind of response you make. That is the educational, the goal of education or the process of education. And the teacher is not simply a giver. The important thing we have to take into account the change in the attitude or the paradigm shift in the world, in the realm of teaching is, previously teacher was the giver. Maybe he has something in his pocket or in his hand and he will go to the classroom and people will be looking for him as if they are waiting for in a temple for prasada. So the teacher assumes the role of a godly personality and he simply gives whatever he knows. But now the role has been changed and we call him a facilitator. He's no more a giver or simply transferer of some information. It is not simply transfer of some information from the teacher to the student. That is rooted through whatever is in the textbook is rooted through the teacher to the learner. That was the earlier understanding of the teaching process. Now what we have to understand is the teacher's role is to make something happen in the learner. So the learner has to learn. The learner has to learn. So we have to provide experience, such a appropriate, suitable learning experience, so that the teacher learns. So the learner learns the objective. Whatever we have something, so the teacher has to learn on his own, and the teacher's duty is to provide the necessary learning experience. What if we say this thing, then definitely he will learn this. Like that, the teacher's role ends or is more focused on providing necessary, appropriate learning experience so that the learner picks up the concepts to be learned during that class. So how he is doing this? The teacher is not simply a giver, but he has to make something happen. So some changes in the mind or in the cognitive domain of the learner has to happen, or sometimes in the affective domain also. The first point deals with the affective domain. So he is doing this magic of making something happen by drawing and holding the attention of the learner throughout the teaching learning process. The first thing, the first responsibility or the duty of a teacher is to hold the attention. You catch the attention. So, and focus it towards what you are doing. So you have to focus or catch the attention or draw the attention and hold it throughout the teaching learning process. So he should be focusing his attention on the teacher. So that is our first, that decides the success of your program. If you don't hold their attention, if you fail to hold their attention, then definitely whatever follows will not reach them. So that is the first thing we say. Then after holding their attention, drawing and holding their attention to your activities, to your whatever you do in the classroom, then whatever you do is called providing appropriate learning experience. So the right learning experience, that right experience you have to provide for the learner so that he learns it on his own. So he learns it. Right. So just I can recall, there is a saying in English normally we say in the field of education, if you want to teach John Greek, you should know John Greek and how to teach John Greek. So you should know, see, it is not the assumption may be, if I know Greek or if I know a language, I can go and teach them straight away. No, that's not the right thing to do. Who is the learner? Who is the receiver of your whatever you transact in the classroom? Who is there to receive it? So you have to understand John as a person, his personality, so that your transaction can be successful. So you should know John, you should know Greek, and you should know how to teach John Greek. For this fellow, for this boy, for this student, how can I teach? This is different. There are individual differences. Those who have this degree in education know that there are individual differences count. Well, when we say something in the classroom, when we do something in the classroom, and we try to transact or share some information, the information reaches 100% to a few boys and only partially for others, and some may not get the information at all. So there are individual differences in the classroom that we have to recognize instead of finding fault with the learner. When other people have understood, we have not understood. That we should not, instead of saying that we have failed to make the particular group understand. Some 4 or 5 people have not understood. So we have to correct ourselves and we have to change ourselves so that they also can get whatever we want to give them, whatever we want to transact them, like that. Okay. Right. So the instruction and evaluation. Instruction, I can say the teaching. The other term we use, the normally used is instruction. But in the writing, while writing the lesson plans also, we say instructional objective. So while you are teaching, you have some, you go to the classroom with some instructional objective. So the moment the, see, just I can tell you that when I was given the topic, I came to this, I have come to this place to give you, to provide some information on the terms, 4 terms. So teaching, learning, testing, and evaluation, or the concepts. I explained some concepts which are important to understand throughout the other materials, other lectures in this during this training program. So this is the basic concepts or basic terms or terminology we have to understand so that we can follow the following the success classes. So that was my instructional objective. So my objective was to introduce the important concepts which are necessary for the participants. So around 50 people are here. So that they can understand the following classes, the succeeding classes. So that is my instructional objective. Like that, every teacher who enters a classroom will have some instructional objective. And that is, teaching. So some teaching objectives he has. So instruction may be thought of involving 3 fundamental and interrelated steps. So what the teaching or instruction involves 3 steps. So it is, what are the 3 steps? Deciding what the student is to learn. So you must be very sure about what you are going to teach in that 45 minutes or 50 minutes duration. So you have to go to the classroom, enter the classroom with your decision or with a determination or to say what you are going to say, to decide what you are going to say in that 45 minutes. The content should be decided. You cannot say because if it is a planned one, the students will also be planned for that. So as per the timetable, yesterday you taught this, and today also the same science class or English class follows, means yesterday this is where the teacher left the class. So the students, the learners come with the agenda that today the teacher will continue whatever he left incomplete yesterday. So that is their agenda. And your agenda is to complete whatever you left incomplete yesterday. So that if that is their agenda and your agenda will meet, their planning and your planning will meet, and there will be a success. And they come with some other expectation. So this is what he left, and he will continue on that. And if you go and take up something new for them, which they never expected, it was not there in their agenda, then definitely they will find it difficult to follow. Suppose perhaps that is possible after making some 10-15 minutes, they will lose some time and in picking up whatever something new you say. So what we decide is you have to decide beforehand what you are going to transact in that particular classroom, in this given classroom, right? Then once you decide what is to be transacted, the content of the transaction, the content, the subject matter, the vishya, like that, the subject matter, the information like that you decide, then you carry out the actual instruction. Then follows the real teaching, that is providing the learning experience, the process of providing learning experience. So this is the second level. So you decide what is to be done, then do it. As per your plan, you do it. Then evaluating the learning. It is an integral part of the instruction. So without evaluation, the teaching never ends without evaluation. You have to evaluate at every step sometimes. Before you teach also, before you start doing that also, you have to evaluate, means whether they have mastered whatever we taught them yesterday. So if I teach them division in mathematics, I have to be sure that they know the multiplication and addition, other processes which are basic for your division. So they should know the tables. So I have to make sure, I have to ensure that they know they are ready with their knowledge of multiplication and addition, subtraction, all this. Only when I am sure that they know all these 3 fundamental processes, arithmetic processes, I can go for division. So like that, we have to evaluate the learner before, whether he is ready for what I am going to do now. That is first stage of. Then throughout the lecture also, throughout the instruction or teaching also, at every step you have to make sure that they are following. This you could have learned in the classrooms. Usually at the college level, the classrooms, the teacher will say, do you follow me? Is it clear? Is it clear? Do you follow me like this? Or some of the very frequently used questions used, the heard utterances in the classroom means that the teacher wants you to be clear about what he has said. In the after 10 minutes or after 5 minutes, every 5 minutes or 10 minutes, he repeats that. Is it clear? Is it clear? Is it clear? Means he wants you to make things clear, so understand things clearly, so that you are following the address. Do you follow me? Means you are address his lecture or his teaching you are following. So that is evaluation during the process of teaching. So before the process, you have to make sure that they are ready for whatever you are going to give them, whatever you are going to teach them, translate them in the classroom. Right. Then it is evaluation at the end. After teaching for 45 minutes, maybe at the end of this class, maybe this after some 60-75 minutes of class, I can ask you, do you have any doubts or do you want any clarification for any of the concepts discussed during this 60-75 minutes? So that is evaluating you. Instead of you are getting clarified, I can also ask. If you ask a question, in turn I can ask you a question. Have you got this idea? What is this? Then I can go further like that. So normally this is a session for evaluating the learners, and you can also evaluate the teacher sometimes by asking some doubts. So anyway, the evaluation at the end of the teaching learning process is there. So these are the 3 steps which is included in the instruction. See, the test, teaching, learning, and we know that evaluation is an integral process. Means testing is an integral process. Without test, you cannot do anything as a teacher. So a test is a procedure in which a sample of an individual's behavior is obtained, evaluated, and scored using standardized procedure. This is the American Educational Research Association has defined this test as it is a procedure. See, it's not a one simple activity. It's a procedure, chain of activities in which a sample of an individual's behavior. You are not included in the test all his behavior. In a particular class, you want their knowledge of behavior, grammar. In another class, it may be their knowledge of this particular literature or Bhakti literature or the novel, like this. So, a sample of an individual's behavior, his knowledge or skill. That is behavior in the sense, I mean, is cognitive behavior, that is knowledge or skill or understanding like that. So, in a particular field is obtained. So, you decide a sample and that sample is tested, that sample is given to them and that is evaluated and scored. You give some mark for them and keep it. So, it marked, evaluating and scored using standardized procedure. See, look that standardized procedure. What is the standardized procedure for? It is for scoring. It is for scoring. So scoring cannot be randomized. You cannot randomly give some marks. So what it's insisted here is there should be a standardized procedure for the marks. So if he mentions only the name of the author, right, you give mark. And the year in which he got the Sahitya Academy Award. So for mentioning the year, right, 1 mark. And for mentioning the name of the work or the book for which he was awarded. So write about this author's Sahitya Academy Award means the 3 things you expect. The author's name in full, maybe pseudonym or the real name, maybe, and his work is the title of the novel or book, forever work, whatever. And usually the year or maybe the area for novel or short story or whatever the area for under which that what falls. Like that, you have to know for each you can give 1 mark like that. So there should be a standardized procedure. Whether you correct the answer paper or anybody else corrects the answer paper, if there is a standardized procedure accompanying the test paper, definitely there will not be any differences in the scoring. So that is why they say test should always be accompanied by a standardized procedure for scoring. Only then if your scoring is okay, other things will be okay. If your scoring is not okay, maybe you are there, randomly you are giving mark. One teacher gives 4 marks, the other teacher gives for the same answer 2 marks only, like that means, then based on that, nothing can be done. So whatever you do based on that, not a standardized procedure or randomly assigned marks, whatever you build up on this basic thing, that will collapse. So the basic thing in testing or the process in the evaluation is you should follow a standardized procedure or a definite systematic procedure for awarding the scores. Also as a procedure. And there is another definition which says an educational test is a measuring device. So it involves measuring device, and therefore involves rules. So measurement means there is a rule, administration guidelines and scoring criteria, like that, for assigning numbers that represent an individual's performance. In the test, you simply give some mark. So you are giving some number that represents an individual's performance. So based on the individual's performance, you are giving the number, mark, or scoring. That should be rule based. So again, this test as a device means this device. See, if a merchant has a device, a balance, maybe a weighing machine, one for buying and the one for selling, means then definitely it's a dual mode of, this buying, it will be always showing, he'll be selling, means instead of 500 grams means the substance he gives will be 400, 450, like that means. For buying things, instead of 500 grams, he will get 600 grams and pay only for 500. Like that, if there are two guidelines, two different criteria, then it is not reliable, So in order to make the test reliable, you must have a standardized or criteria or standardized procedure for scoring this one. So measurement is simply you are assigning a number or sometimes a letter or sometimes both. So that you can do. See here, the latest concept about testing, I say, this we have to understand. As teachers, you have to know what is taking place, what is the new changes taking place in the field of evaluation or any teaching also. As I say now, teaching is communication, as is learning. They are reciprocal aspects of one relation. Learning is the obverse of making meaning. They are two sides of one sheet of paper. So it's a communication. See, as learning is, teaching is communication and learning is also communication. What is that? See, means you say something that the learner makes meaning of that statement. You make a statement, the teacher makes a statement, and he understands that. He makes the meaning of the statement, and he responds as he makes some statement, and the teacher has to understand. So the reciprocity of the communication is important in the teaching learning process. So it is making meaning. Communication is making meaning. So making meaning means expressing yourself and understanding the other person who is making a sentence. So there are two sides of one sheet. So communication, in the sense we say, there are two sides. The teacher communicates and the learner has to communicate. So when both of them are communicating means there is, so what he makes some signs or symbols or some prompts that is rightly understood and rightly interpreted by the listener or the learner. So he makes some symbol, he makes some sign language simply, or utter some sentences in a context, then the learner has to understand the meaning in that particular context. So that is, he is making meaning of he is making meaning, and thereby he can say, this is what you said, like that. Assessment is an integral component of teaching process. Assessment can and should provide information that both enhances instruction and promotes learning. So it is an integral component of teaching process, and it can and should provide information on what? Both. So that information provided should help instructional process, should improve the instructional process. enhances instruction and promotes learning. So from the student side, your assessment helps him to improve his learning, improves his learning, and from the teacher's side, it improves the instruction. So it is useful, the assessment is useful both for the teacher and the learner. So the teacher can improve his instructional process. When there is a failure among the students for understanding something, the teacher redoes the lesson, whatever he is doing. And so by while redoing, he finds different examples, different, in the explanations offered in using different words like that. So he changes the presentation, the technique of presentation, or the learning experience is slightly changed. So the different learning experience is provided so that the learners understand it. So it promotes their learning, it improves their learning, and at the same time it improves our instruction also. This achievement test measures knowledge and skills in an area in which instruction has been provided. So here, the achievement test is the test with which we are all dealing with. Normally, a teacher teaches something for a certain duration, maybe 1 week or 3 classes a unit, or 1 week the whole lesson like this. Some curriculum is covered in 6, maybe in 1 semester like that. So you for a certain period of time you deal with some subject matter and complete it. After that, you have to check whether they have mastered whatever the thing you taught them, whatever the thing you have provided them by varying learning experiences, teaching learning experiences, by providing varying examples. They have made some 10-15 presentations, and after the 10 presentations, they must be able to know this thing, and they must be able to do this thing. So skill is their performance, knowledge is simply knowing, the recalling, remembering, all that can come under knowledge, and skill is their performance, how their performance are doing has improved. So this is achievement test, and what is being tested here is in which instruction has been already provided. So you must have already been you have taught something to them. Only on the thing, whatever you have taught, you can ask the questions. So your testing process will be restricted to whatever the content, whatever the subject matter we have discussed in the classroom. For that, that is why achievement is always as focus. It focuses on the content already covered, content covered by the curriculum, and you cannot go beyond that. But for the other tests, when, as we said, see, there are other tests, aptitude test, which we take when we go for some courses like even for B.Ed, we have no aptitude test, entrance examination. So in the screening or the entrance examination you take, that is not based on a given syllabus. So one might have studied BSc, the other might have studied BA. So the one person or the other person, yet another person must have studied BCA. All those interested in joining B.Ed, they take a common test, and there are no separate tests for them like that. So the test is based on the course or the training program they want to undergo. So that is based on like that. So whatever subject they have studied is not covered. So that will provide the base for their understanding. That will be their basic knowledge. So that with their knowledge, they can understand something given to them new. So in a new situation or a new concept when we teach them, they have the basics required for understanding something new given to them. Right. So achievement test always is restricted to the teaching already has been covered, whatever subject matter we have already discussed in the classroom. Whereas in the aptitude test, that is not the case. That the content of the aptitude test is based on what they are going to do in the future. So in 1 or 2 year program or training program, what they are going to do, whether they have the requisite knowledge or basic knowledge to undergo the training program or undergo that course, whether they have the right aptitude for undergoing the teacher program. Like the aptitude in the sense their innate potential, the potential ability or attitude also sometimes can be tested. So like that, their tendency towards others or other objects and other persons, these things count when you want to become a teacher. So all these are tested in an aptitude test. So that is, and proficiency test, again, when a proficiency test is for employment, then when bank employment is there for banking clerk or a professional officer, science, engineering graduates or arts graduates, anyone can appear, commerce graduates. So there the content is not related to whatever instruction you have received. See, you get my point? See, in the achievement test alone, we restrict our test content to the instruction given to them. Whereas in other two types, identities aptitude test for selection or selection of candidates for a course or training, or employment examinations or proficiency tests, where their efficiency or the level of perfection is tested. And there also, it is with reference to the content is with reference to the job they are going to do, they are going to take up in future. That decides the content. So we have to understand that achievement test is the thing, it's based on whatever we have already taught them. See, assessment deals with a relationship between that which was to be learned, a curriculum. So assessment in the educational sense, there is a curriculum based on that, and that which has been learned. So it is a relationship, what was to be learned, what they must have learned in a classroom, or 45 minutes or maybe 1 month duration, what they are expected to have learned, and what actually they have learned. So these two things are there. This relationship decides the assessment process. So yeah, because in a class of 40 or 50 students, it's not the uniform, it's not the same thing for all. So you with some expectation, the teacher goes to the classroom and maybe he has 40 instructional objectives. He has covered 40 instructional objectives during the 40 class, and all the 40 need not have been taken or received by the learners. So they have so what they have actually learned, what every individual has actually learned. So you select a sample of instructional objectives. All the 40 you cannot include in the test. That is why in an earlier definition it was said sample of behavior. So if this is the thing, what will be their behavior? 40 different aspects I dealt with during the 40 classes, and I cannot give them in a test of 30 minutes duration or 1 hour duration. All the 40 aspects I cannot test. So I take some selected aspects, so sample of the behavior which I want, and give a test based on that. My assessment is based on that. So which they have learned. The two major issues of assessment are how to recognize the learning and say when it appears in a mode not expected or legitimated, and what might constitute data of that which has been learned. So two things we have to decide. See, how to recognize the learning. I have learned this. I have given them the pronunciation of certain words, right? How to know whether they have learned the pronunciation? I cannot give them a paper pencil test and get that their ability to pronounce the words. In English, we know that there is no one-to-one correspondence between the spelling and the pronunciation. The same spelling may be there. There may be different pronunciations like that. So then we have to decide how to recognize that. We have given them something. We have provided some learning experience, and they have learned something. How to know whether they have learned, whether they have understood also. Maybe in the taxonomy class you will come to know more about that. Maybe how they have, what they have. See, I teach some literature or some novel about that. I want to make sure they have understood the allegory or the figures of speech given in that. So how to make sure, how to know that they have understood. I can ask them to explain the one line in their own words, or give an example for this. Whether a student has learned the concept of apple, I can provide you them a basket full of different fruits, maybe pomegranate, apple, and other fruits, which are even tomato or something of these several fruits which are likely in red or associated color. Then they have to identify that. So they have to give example or provide an example, select an example for that. So that is one way of understanding. So how to recognize their learning, that we have to, that is one issue of it. So when you want to test pronunciation, you must have a test where his saying or is tested. So you must go to the classroom with a recording device or some speaker or some electronic device where you can record him, or where there is a provision for recording his voice, and leisurely you can assess whether he has pronounced it clearly. Or a language lab, for example. In Bangalore or other language institutes, you may have a language lab where the 40 students are sitting and the teacher will sitting in a console and he can say the words and they can say, and the teacher can test them whether they are pronouncing it correctly. So, appropriate arrangement should be made for assessing the thing. Say when it appears in a mode not expected, it may appear in a model in a way that is not expected, or sometimes this is not the way of expressing thing and it's not legitimated or like that. So it is not the proper way of expressing thing like that. So what might constitute the data? What kind of data will provide the correct, ensure that they are understanding? So that will clarify that they have understood. So two things you have to decide: how to recognize and what kind of data is needed for assessing their learning. So whether maybe they're right. See, I want to know whether they have the organizing skill. I want them to, in a language, can they write a paragraph, well-knit paragraph, or can they write a well-knit essay on a given topic? So well-knit in the sense, well-structured, well-organized in a sequence, in some logical sequence or chronological sequence, whatever sequence, like that. So is a must for that particular topic. So usually I should decide how to get that information from them and what data should be there. So what data in the sense, maybe it is an essay competition, an essay question, essay type question. What is the data you expect from them in that particular for that question? So their diction, their choice of words in presenting the ideas, their paragraph structure, whether each paragraph has a topic sentence and there is an explanation, cause and explanation relationship, and whether they have used linkers, proper cohesive devices. In language classroom, you must know that when you want to assess or evaluate an essay, you should check whether they are using the right words, choice of words, and whether they are making correct sentence structures. So they are putting these sentences, the meaning in a specific order so that we understand it clearly, and whether they are using linkers, appropriate connecting words, cohesive devices we call it. That's cohesive devices in the sense maybe one sentence. See, there was a king. A king had two children. Like that, if we say there was a king and a king had two children, means again if you are using an indefinite article A, these two persons may be different, two different kings may be there. So simply by using the king had two children means then definitely you are linking the first sentence with the second sentence. So like that, whether the learner is able to use cohesive devices or linkers so that the entire essay or paragraph becomes a well-knit, well-connected sentences like that. These are the data I want. So they are linking devices used by them and their coherence in that expression. Coherence in the cohesive in the means cohesive devices or linkers, I say, for construction, the structure of the sentences and paragraphs. Whereas in the coherence in C, the meaning conveyed. In the meaning conveyed, the coherence of unity of thought is there. When there is a thought, the progression of thought in throughout the essay, or maybe see when coherence, one simple example may clarify you. When somebody drinks and he is under intoxication, under the influence of that alcohol or something, or some drugs, the sentences may not be connected. The first sentence may be about one thing, the second sentence, the following sentence may be something entirely different from the first sentence. So it is, we don't take it, we don't care for that, because there is no coherence in his communication. He tries to communicate, but there is no coherence, there is no flow of thought or unity of thought in that, there is no continuity in the thought. So what we expect in the learner in the essay is their coherence also. So that is the data we want. That has to be decided. So how to recognize? If the writing skill means I can give an essay for them. And it is not free writing, it may be a guided writing first. At the earlier stages, at the initial classes, maybe up to 6, 7 also, you can give them guided writing. You give the outline so that you expand the idea like that. Maybe then free writing task you can give. So what kind of task you have give. That is to be, you have to recognize that, you have to identify it, and then you give the task. And after giving the task, you have to decide what are the things, what constitute the data, what data are expected in that their answer. So that these two things are really a challenge. Even now we do not know what is that, and very frequently we are asking, write a short note on. So write a short note on is one of the worst questions we can expect. So why? Because we have, the teacher has no aim. The teacher has no definite purpose or definite answer in his mind. The student can write anything that comes to him, anything he writes related to that topic, that question. So it may be there can be 100 different answers, as many students as there are possible. So like that, n students means n different answers can be, because you want them to write about that topic. About that topic, there may be 100 ideas, and each one will be writing different, their own things, whatever they know. But the question should assess or check whether they know a particular fact. Each question, each test item in the test paper should tell the teacher what exactly he knows. So that prior to the process of giving the test, the teacher should know these are the teaching objectives I have included in the test paper. They should know the name of the scientist who discovered medicine for polio. So this is what. It is not anything they write about Jonas Salk. So if it is the talk, I want exactly what this is, what kind of medicine he found out, discovered for this. Like that, I should be very clear about the answer. In a short note question, there is no clarity about the answer. You don't expect anything, and they also have no idea about anything. They will simply write. So the data you expect is not clear, and you have not decided how to recognize that. So simply you are giving just for the sake of the test paper. That should not be there. That's what is insisted here. So there is always a relationship between the curriculum and the actual things taught and actual things learned by them. And this is how to recognize what kind of question you can ask and what kind of information you can expect in their answer. So these things you have to decide. And here you see instructional cycle. Instructional cycle, see in this, the teaching process. The teaching cycle or teaching process is there. See, you assess the students' performance and learning needs. First, you assess their performance and their learning needs. What are they able to do now, as of now? And what their need, your need, and I told you earlier, in this, that your need and then your presentation should cater to their needs. When a student comes to the classroom with a need, with some information, with some thirst for some information. So there is a need for I want to know this class, that he encounters a problem about the area of a circle, or maybe then he should, in that class, maybe yesterday the teacher was teaching about the circle and he was teaching only perimeter. Now I want to know how to find the area of a circle. So that is there in the textbook, and he comes to the classroom. That is his need now. He wants to know or learn about the area of a circle, the relevant formula he wants, like that. So what he already knows, what he wants now, all should have the teacher should have the idea about this. Then you plan teaching and learning program according to that, according to their need, That their need means not without outside the frame of the curriculum. Within the frame of the curriculum, for this classroom, to this particular classroom, he comes with some intention or with some need. So that has to be fulfilled in your teaching learning program. Then you implement the program. So you plan for it. So lesson plan, that's what. So you plan for the program and you implement it. You actually perform it. You actually do it. Actually deliver that. So how to deliver, you decide there. So you know their needs and you know their performance and how this performance can be improved or their needs can be fulfilled, you decide and you plan it accordingly, and then you actually implement it. You actually deliver the goods. So your actual delivery is there. Then during the delivery, what is it? See, the arrow mark goes there, you see. Review prior learning, what already learned in the yesterday, the prior class. Then introduce new material, relating it, associating it to this new material, the earlier material to this. That is where the teacher's success lies. So he knows something and you have to relate it to the already known thing. So from known to unknown, that is the step we usually follow. Easy to difficult in the sense, so known to unknown. Whatever he knows 2 pi r. So pi he knows the value of pi he knows, on r he knows radius, what is radius he knows. Then you can move on to, so pi r square, that is area. You use a formula which is related to them like that. So you relate whatever you are teaching new to this already their prior knowledge. That is how. So introduce new material, then provide demonstration. 3 things I have here. You see here. Demonstration is your performance. You show them that this is how. So if you do this, this is it. So you write a sentence on the board, and what will be the possible meanings. You can discuss it. So instead of the structure, the meaning is more important in the language classroom. So if a teacher, English teacher teaches, he has come to Chennai. Maybe Mr. Nadda has come to Chennai. If I say the sentence, then how to make sure they have understood the meaning of the sentence. So whether he has left Chennai or here. Usually the meaning when I say he has come to Chennai means he is still at Chennai. Normally the normal sentence we use in the past tense is when the action is completely over like that. No? So where you can ask a question. Now when I say he has come to Chennai, whether he is here, there is a possibility of his being at Chennai or has he left. Usually what we expect from the sentence is he is probably at Chennai now. And he came to Chennai means, Mr. Nadda came to Chennai means there is no idea about his presence, whether he is Chennai or not. Whereas when he has come to Chennai, convey the meaning or the implied meaning is actually he is there. Like that, he can he can ask different interpretations for the sentence. You can take your own language. In Malayalam, you can give sentences where you use present perfect tense and past tense, and you have to make the difference. Why do we use present perfect tense? So it is there. So sometimes it is not. See, it is said, the English teachers will say it is remote past or distant past or like that. That is not remote past or recent past. Nothing is there. No such difference is there. Either is not over, the action is not completely over, or even if the action is completed, the sense of he is still connected to that. He is still connected to that means, or he still remembers. The feeling of relationship is there with that means, then he can say present perfect tense. That whether they have understood that concept, he can check by asking some interpretive questions. So when I say somebody invites me for a dinner, for some I have had. When I say I have had my dinner means, no, I don't want dinner. I don't want it. I decline the invitation by saying already my stomach is full. So I am using present perfect tense for that. And I had my dinner in the sense, maybe some 4 or 5 years ago, I am likely to have something minimum there. So that is how in your grammar class, you have to give the sentences, and instead of asking them to rewrite or similar model copy sentences, their own sentences, they will simply replace something, and they will, instead of that, you ask them to interpret the meaning so that they understand the correct use of the language. That is important. So you have to demonstrate them how this structure differs from the other structure. Not the structural differences, but the semantic differences between sentences. That is where the success of a language teacher lies. It is not simply laying down the rules and giving them the structural examples. You focus on the meaning, and especially the differences in the meaning of different grammatical sentences, so that they use the right structure in the right occasion. And guided practice. Guided practice is exercise. So exercise is guided practice, where you can guide them for doing the exercises. And application is the real sentence, is the need for the real sentence happens in the application. So when you see your father has come from, you can say this, he has come from Delhi to your house and he is still there, and what sentence will you say? So he came yesterday, your father came to your house yesterday, he is still in your house. what will you send? What sentence will you use in English? So he has come from Delhi, or he has come to my house. So your father came yesterday, and this morning he left for some other place. What will you say then? He came to my house. So he cannot say he has come to my house like that. So you give the situation and make the learners apply the rules. Already they have the rules and the information about the structure and their meaning, semantic differences and structural differences they have learned, whether they are able to apply that in a given situation. So you provide only the situation, let them come out with the appropriate sentence, you applying the grammar rules they have already been taught in the classroom. So that you have to do. So three things are there. So you link the new thing to the old with the old, and you are providing the demonstration. You give demonstrate something, provide the learning experience, and you give them some guided practice, and then you ask them to apply their knowledge in a new situation, maybe in a real life situation. They can use that the information, whatever they have learned, they have mastered. So this is the exercise is, we say that stage is skill getting stage. They are likely to make mistakes. So that error is called a developmental error. During when they're making exercise, errors in the exercise means don't get angry with them. You be patient to them and explain it once again so that they learn. So the purpose of exercise is not evaluation, giving them some mark. It is to make sure that they have learned that idea. So it is a practicing thing, and the stage is only skill getting stage, and where they try to use their skill in application. When they are applying that rule, then they are trying to the skill using stage, the particular skill or knowledge they are using in the application stage. That you have to do, and promote independent practice and application. So all these, the three, demonstration, guided practice and application within the classroom, that during the class means it is for all practice. It is for all practice. Guided practice. It is for guided practice. Some within the classroom, the same classroom, same time. So after this, immediately after teaching, you give some sufficient practice, especially in language. The teacher should give this. It is not like any other subject, and we can recall whatever we have learned in our earlier classes, or maybe in your training programs or in-service training programs earlier, that language is a skill subject. Language is a skill subject, whereas other your science, geography, mathematics are maybe they are knowledge subject, we can say. If you have that knowledge, it is okay. If you have that knowledge, it is okay. Nobody is going to ask you who invented the telegraph, or when you go out of the school. When you go out of the school or college, nobody is going to ask you, except perhaps your classmates or some person interested in that, what is theory of relativity? What is Einstein's theory of relativity? What is Newton's discovery? Nobody is going to ask you. But you have studied English. A person in a bank may ask you to fill in the form. A person in the post office may ask you to fill in the form or read and explain the content. So the language is, you are encountering the use application situations outside the classroom also. Unless you have the skill in that particular language, you cannot say that I know that language. See, I often say that my own case, I know how to read and write Hindi means. If anybody asks, do you know Hindi? I say, I don't know. Because if they immediately give some exercise, give some paragraph and ask me to get the meaning of this, or give me they give a letter, write this in Hindi means, I cannot read and I can read and write, but I cannot understand the content and I cannot make some meaning on my own. So I say, I do not know. So knowing a language requires your ability to use the language and make meaning, creating meaning. You are writing and making meaning, understanding the sentences. So these two aspects are important in language. These two skills are important. So that is why the skill here, the teacher's role is to provide the necessary skill for the use of the language. And the normal doubt, the normal question we experience is why it is their mother tongue. Actually, most of you are teaching the mother tongue means, then what is the need for them to teach them all this? No. They acquire the language. We as teachers, the language teachers, we should know two things about the language teaching. Learning is in an artificial or in a deliberate situation. The learner learns the language. Acquisition is, it is not a formal learning. The learner picks up, whoever the person picks up the language from the data. It is available. He is exposed to the data. A person from Tamil Nadu comes to Kerala as a laborer to work in the tea estate or to work in the rubber estates. He is not undergoing any certificate program or any program in Malayalam. He comes and stays there, and lot of language data are exposed. He is exposed to a lot of language data. Lot of people speak around him Malayalam all the time means. Then he picks up here and there, and he tries to make the meaning, and he tries to get the meaning. So making meaning and creating meaning is made possible because of the situation, because of his exposure to the language data, and because of the device which our Chomsky described as language acquisition device. There is a device, maybe virtual device. You cannot physically find this thing. There is a device which helps any person to pick up the language rules from the data. As if the computer is picking up so once it is programmed means there is a programmed computer in our mind, that's what Chomsky says. That is called LAD, language acquisition device, and lot of language is poured in. He filters the data, arranges the data, systematizes, because language is a system. Language is a system of symbols. You know that language is definitely, it can be defined very simply as a system of symbols. So a system is systematic. There is a regularity. There is a regular rule is there, and it's a symbolic system. So once the symbology is exposed to the system of symbols, and he is able to analyze the symbols and then make sentences of his own. So this is what acquisition of language. And there also he needs some grammar. If he wants to write something in Malayalam means, then he may require some grammar. Whatever he speaks, he cannot write, may not be able to put down in writing. So there the role comes. And for the native speakers, the mother tongue speakers of Malayalam, you have to teach them how to write correctly and what are the type of words they can use. I told you, in an essay, see, even now, you can see that is the situation in any place, I think, even in Tamil Nadu or even in any, say, when the teacher goes around the examination hall, and the students are writing, they will close or they will stop writing or they will hide whatever they have been writing because they are not confident of their writing. Even now, if you are asked to do something, see, one example, I was in the Regional Institute of English, we get teachers from all the 4 states, and when we ask them to write their prior knowledge, what they know, what they can do in English, then I will ask them to write about elephant. My task is to ask the teachers from Kerala to write some 5 sentences on elephant. Many of them will be struggling to write. 1 or 2 sentences they will write, and they will stop writing, and they will be thinking what to write like that. So it's a very familiar animal to them. They are very familiar with the elephant. Wherever you can see, the elephant can be seen in Kerala. From my knowledge of this going around the place, I have seen. And their geographical condition also, it is more there. And still they are finding it difficult to write about 5 sentences about that. So the writing skill we have not developed. After 10 years of 12 years of studying our language, we are not able to present ourselves or express ourselves, whatever we want to express in that language. This is the case in mother tongue also. Many of them are not able to express their thoughts correctly, aptly in the language. See, the use of or the wrong use of language, I will say. One CEO visited one school, then he asked the teacher, chief education officer, that asked the particular teacher who goes very often on leave, and he goes to his native place and extends his leave on medical grounds like that. So the CEO asks, so why do you do like that? You go to your place and then apply for leave. That is very bad, he says. And he wanted to convince the CEO, but he thought he is presenting the idea clearly, saying that, he said, sir, you have also come here. come to this village as in our jeep. How do you know he will travel safely back this evening? So this is the question he asked. Thinking that his safety is not ensured, his health may, but what is that? It is a threatening information, you know. You have come here, you are here. How do you know you will safely return? If you ask the CEO or like your officer like this, and you want to give some example, some explanation, unfortunately I fell ill like that. So instead of saying that, he says some example which is not the appropriate situation in that situation, and the CEO got maybe irritated and maybe so he tried to punish the teacher like that. So it is both of them are speaking in their mother tongue only. So he asked them in Tamil and that man also replies in Tamil, but there is a miscommunication. So there is a the misunderstanding between them because they are not able to use the language appropriately in appropriate situation. Who is the person you are addressing and what is the situation you are addressing? All these things you know, the physical context and social context and psychological context are there in your communication. All this you have to tell your learners. So this is the way you can express. So this I cannot do it. If you say in English, I cannot do it means it may be your deliberate denial. I am not able to do it means that is different. So how you are expressing, putting the ideas that decides the success of your in your life, in your profession or professional life or your personal life also. The appropriate use of language should be told, even if it is their mother tongue. They have to learn so many things, and the teacher's role is to function is to give them all. See, test designing involves the three things. So what is to be tested? That is content, and why is to be tested, the purpose of the test, and how it is to be tested. So the why, it is not in the same order. I can say why is even in the beginning also. It is not a linear fashion. It is a cyclic fashion. You can say why is decided, then you decide the content. Why this test is conducted. So in Kerala, there maybe a tourist place is there, and you want to. Many foreigners are visiting in that place. Means they visit that place means not normally cab drivers are to be given some course in English. So you can decide that. So I will give them the drivers, cab drivers, taxi drivers, the ability to get the meaning of the sentences in English and give them reply on simple questions. Sir, where do you want to go? Next, where can we go? Like that, some minimum communication is required. For them, you are designing a course. Then only test is decided. So when you are designing a test for them after the course, you cannot ask them to write an essay on this. You cannot ask them to write a paragraph on that. What we want is oral communication. So you have to present some conversation and you have to ask them to fill in the blanks in the conversation. See, that too orally, that too, they can listen to the conversation and they can answer the questions. So like that only. So when you want to test listening and speaking, the situation should be suitable for their listening and speaking. It is not writing. You cannot test listening and speaking by reading and writing. They are altogether different skills. So there is no provision for the tape recorder or this language lab. What can I do? I will ask them to write means, then you are not testing. Your test is not valid. So when you are designing a test, you should know why this test is conducted, administered, and that decides what is to be the content of the test, how it can be tested. The content is only their listening and speaking. So their minimal communication skills, that is the content. And the method of testing is using tape recorder or using some audio video devices like that, so that is the method. So all these are decided when you are designing a test, because in an achievement test, these are all achievement tests only, and in achievement test, what is taught in the classroom, throughout your classroom you are using only tape recorder and other things. They listen to the sentence and they repeat it orally. Then in the test there is no scope for this, means I cannot give them some paper pencil test. So this test design has to be decided based on these three. And test types, maybe prognostic test is a progress test. That is what we usually do in our classroom. So that the technical term is prognostic test. Progress test, what the progress made by the the learner when he comes to the classroom in the beginning, in the June, what is his knowledge, and in the December or January, what is his present knowledge, whether there has been any progress in his knowledge or skill. So that is tested in the prognostic test, where we have that test usually. And diagnostic test is to identify the problems of the learners in achieving the objectives. So the diagnostic test, as a diagnostic lab, we very often go these days. No one is can escape from these diseases. So this corona, or even before that, some kind of this viral infection will come, Ebola or this, and we want to get ourselves tested for this. So test to identify the problem of the learners in achieving the objectives. Whereas in the classroom diagnostic test means you are teaching them something, you are providing some learning experience, and from that they have to learn whether they have achieved the objectives of the teacher. So you have some instructional objectives. When you are translating that in the classroom, whether they have achieved. So that is diagnostic test. Here, sir, this is the content is tested in the regular progress test, and the same only I can ask. I cannot have different questions. So the idea is not asking different questions, but the idea is to organize. Very simply I'm saying, in brief or quickly, what I can say is this: in a diagnostic test, the same questions you ask. Whatever you ask in your regular progress test question, same questions you ask. The only change you have to make is, in the regular progressive test and the regular classroom test or irregular progress test, section A and section B, section C, we will have. Normally, any teacher will have some 2-3 sections. And the sections will be based on the marks. Section A will be 1 mark question, section B 2 mark question, section C 5 mark question. The same sections you can have, the same questions you can have, but in the arranging, the organization or arrangement of the questions slightly differs. In section 1, all prose questions on prose passage. And section B, all poetry questions. And section C, all grammar questions. So prose, poetry and grammar, 3 sections. Now your mark will give you exactly where there is the weakness. Whereas in the previous test, section A, section B mark will not give you any idea about his knowledge in any particular area, because mixed questions are there. Section A, 10 marks means whether he whether he is poor in prose, poetry, or we do not know, because all the questions are. So in the diagnosis state, simply I say, you organize the questions, arrange the questions based on the content, so that your marks in 3 sections will give you where he is good, where he is not good. That will give you. In a regular test, when he gets 60 marks, and we cannot say your mark is divided all the 3 portions, maybe 40, 40, 20 grammar. And grammar mark, he in our grammar section, without attending the grammar section, he can get 60 marks, and you can say he has got 60 marks in Malayalam, so he is a good student. But his mark in grammar is 0. How can he say it's good student? So your 60 is not the correct indication of their case. So when you arrange them, so still when you give the test in a diagnostic patient, this patient if you give, and he is 0 mark in grammar, will tell you, oh, he is weak in grammar, like that. So to identify the problem, you can use this. And NRT, non-reference test, is reporting results based on, based on the reporting results. It is based on average performance of the group. So simple example I have given you. A's performance is better than that of B, but poorer than that of C. This is non-reference test. We compare A's performance with B and C, and then say, when compared to B, he is better. When compared to C, like that, he is not good, like that. So we are not saying nothing about his A's performance. A's performance is compared to others, and then based on that we say. That will not be a reliable or dependable process to know about the A's performance. Whereas in the criterion reference test, you see, the results are reported based on achievement of instructional objectives. So I have some set of instructional objectives, whether he has achieved. So for example, A can write about 2,500 words without spelling mistakes and can pronounce them. This is my report is on this. I am reporting not compared to B or compared to C. No. Simply I have some 2,500 words. He should be able to spell their words correctly and pronounce them correctly. And he has achieved. So he can say about 2,500 words, like that. So that is criterion reference. And all your TOEFL tests or IELs, those who want to go abroad for their studies or migration, They have to take these tests and they are band decided on band levels of band, and they are all criterion reference test, and your performance is compared to the objectives, and with reference to the objectives, you say whether he has achieved the objectives and which area he is weak and which area he is strong, like that, and not it is not without reference to any other's performance. So in the objective type test and subjective type test is, see, scoring is not influenced by the scorer's personal feelings and likes and dislikes in the objective test. So when he has to score means, usually in the multiple choice question and other things, the scorer has no role to play. Simply if 1 mark is given, he has to give 1 mark. See, the regular example I tell you, when who was the first Prime Minister of India means, one person can write Nehru, the other person can write Jawaharlal Nehru, the other person can write Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. If it is in the subjective type question, one person can give only, a teacher will give only half a mark for Nehru, and 1 mark for Jawaharlal Nehru, and 2 marks for Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. The maximum mark is 2. He decides himself. So for Nehru only means I will give this mark, and Jawaharlal Nehru means I will give this mark. Pandit means I will give this mark. So it is influenced by his personal feelings and likes. So whether he is a person who is liberal, he will say Nehru is enough, I will give 2 marks for it. So your marking is not consistent, is not uniform. 2 teachers are the same answer paper will be teaching corrected by 2 teachers or scored by 2 teachers means, one teacher may give him 60 marks, the other teacher may give him some 30-35 marks only. So there is not consistency or uniformity in the scoring in the subjective type. So whereas in the objective type, there is no scope for the personal feelings. So say for example, the same question is given in the multiple choice, the answer, one choice is only Nehru. I don't like the answer Nehru, but anyway I have to give the mark, because in the question paper itself that is the answer. They never mentioned, they never realized that there is Motilal Nehru also, who can be it may refer to him also. But without bothering about this, without interpreting anything, simply the answer key says it is Nehru, it is only C. I give whether the answer, I consider whether the answer given is C, not exactly whether it is Nehru or Jawaharlal Nehru. If there is C, I give the mark. This kind of matching or rearranging questions, you give the mark, and this kind of tests are called objective types, where there is no scope for these personal likings. If 2-3 teachers score the answer papers, there will be uniform scoring and there will not be any difference in their scores, significant differences in their scores. So consistency or uniformity in the scoring is ensured in objective type test, and we have to make our questions as objective as possible. So measurement, assessment and evaluation. Measurement is assigned in numerals, letters or both. It's simply a revision. The selected aspects are attributes of the object being evaluated. So it is, we give some number or letter for that, A grade or O grade for an SA, or maybe 10 marks, 8 marks, or sometimes for some evaluation, you can give both also. In educational context, some other places it is possible. So A plus like that, some A plus grade, B plus grade is there, C, or 3.3 like that. So 3 point number also we give like that, it is possible. That is measurement. And assessment is measuring a particular aspect or prepare status report, that is providing information about the performance in the aspect identified for evaluation. So you take only one aspect and you give the marks in that, and it is marking in the sense it is providing information about his performance in that particular aspect. In a college level it happens, a particular subject will be handled by language subject, especially will be handled by 2-3 teachers means, or you can give one teacher will poetry, another prose drama means, they will give different marks, and the one teacher has to consolidate, because the different marks are the indication of their performance in that particular aspect. One is poetry, the other one is like that. So the subject area or whatever field that is being there tested, there it is only a report. And whereas evaluation is making judgment based on verifiable evidences. So now you see the data obtained through assessment. All the 3 teachers give their assessment, their marks, that is their status report, and one teacher compiles all those things, and he applies his own mind sometimes, or his other things also he will take into account, his attendance, his regularity, his take-home assignments, whether he has done properly. All these he will take into account, and then finally say whether he is eligible for third class, second class, first class, or distinction, or failure, like that. So that is evaluation. You make some judgment and you decide something, whether it is a high stake decision or low stake decision. You decide something about the performance of the learner, and based on verifiable evidence usually, and this is normally what we expect. But in practice, especially evaluation, is some kind of personal decision is there. So even in court judgments, you say the discretionary element, they say the rules are same for all the courts, but some judges will they will differ in there. So there they differ in their element of discretion. They have been given some right to decide something on their own from their personal experience. So that way evaluation can be to some extent be personal in nature sometimes, not always. So evaluation is defined as the process of making value judgment about the worth of a student's product or performance. His activity in the classroom or whatever he has done, completed, this maybe some object he has done, one essay he has done, written, means that is product, or his performance, his way of answering questions, interacting in a conversation, participating in a conversation, like that. So that is, it is already I told you value judgment it is. And evaluation refers to a broader notion than assessment and refers to a process of systematically collecting information. So the assessment is simply providing information. You have to remind like this. So in the measurement, we simply give the numbers or letters for the performance, and assessment, we collect we provide the information. We simply status, what is his status, what is his condition in this particular area, subject area, we give, and that is. Whereas in the evaluation, they collect all the information, they through assessment, like that. So and he comes to a value, he comes to a decision, or he makes judges something about the performance. Refers to the process of systematically collecting information in order to make a judgment. So assessment is providing information, and evaluation is collecting information and deciding or coming to a conclusion or judgment. So teacher and assessment. So this is, we can quickly go through this. A sound teaching decisions require sound assessment procedures to gain useful information. Researchers estimate that, so it's a finding in the research, teachers may spend 1/3 to 1/2 of their time in assessment related activities. And this may be teachers who are very sincere or very careful, committed to their profession will be able to realize this. And when we teach, we have all in our mind, we can go and teach them freely without any this thing. But when it comes for testing, you have to prepare a test paper, means it takes much of our time. What question we can ask? If I ask this question, whether they will be able to answer, whether I have covered in my teaching, whether it is up to their level or beyond their level of understanding, like that. No, you have to decide. You have to take much of, you have to spend much of time on test design, they say. So assessment is an integral part of teaching, and sometimes, or many times also, we can say they have to spend, they are likely to spend more time on evaluation and assessment related activities than on teaching. So assessment is really a challenging task. So that you have to realize and take it very seriously and do it so that your assessment will be reliable and valid. And here, in the research, they have found out standards for teacher competence in education assessment. You have to choosing assessment methods appropriate for instructional decision. Whatever you are teaching, that choose the correct method, and sometimes you have to develop assessment methods on your own. You have to design some task, some outline, complete the right sentences, or maybe write a paragraph based on the given outline, like that. So you have to make the outline. No, so you have to develop the assessment methods, and administering, scoring, interpreting, all you have to do, and you should know how to use the results and developing curriculum. And you have to use the results not only for passing, failing, but to while developing curriculum. So you are an experienced teacher, 10 years you have been teaching, then you are asked to write a book, means then you can say, sir, this I can take you to 8th standard, because many of them have not understood this concept in 7th standard. I know that from my experience. So this can be shifted to 8th standard like that. So your assessment should be helpful in designing the curriculum, developing the curriculum, and generally for school improvement also it should help. And developing valid people grading procedures. The teachers, all these are expected of a teacher. About the assessment, these are the skills or the knowledge you are expected to possess as a teacher. Developing valid people grading procedures and communicating assessment results to the students, parents, other lay audience, for ordinary people and for other educators. How to communicate this result to them. You cannot use much of the statistics for the common man. You have to in simple terms you have to say. And recognizing unethical, illegal, otherwise inappropriate assessment methods and use assessment information and use of assessment. So you should know what is wrong also, what is not to be done. All the other points are about what you have to do, and you have to know what is not to be done also. So it is illegal or otherwise unethical practices, copying or simply your maybe. So these days NEET examinations are they borrow all your phone, even some jewelry also is banned, So because some may use these ornaments for doing some malpractice in the hall, that is why it is being banned. So now you have to, you should know all these also. I'm a good person, good teacher, I do not know all this. If a student copies in the classroom, I don't know all this, I never expected this to happen. That should not be replied. That is the last point you make. That's what I understand from that. So you should know how people will do mistakes. Illegitimate process they will resort to. That also a teacher should know. So to avoid all those things, not to teach them, but to avoid all those things in the classroom. So you should do this also. And thank you so much for